What the Bible teaches about love, 1 Corinthians 13 explained. If I asked you today, do you love God? Most of us would answer yes without hesitation. But here is a harder question, one that quietly exposes our hearts. Do our lives actually reflect the kind of love the Bible talks about, or a version of love shaped more by culture, emotion, and convenience? We live in a world that talks endlessly about love, yet seems to understand it less every day. Love is called a feeling. Love is called attraction. Love is called tolerance. Love is called agreement. But then relationships fall apart, churches divide, families fracture, and faith feels hollow, and we wonder why. The Bible gives a bold and uncomfortable answer in 1 Corinthians 13. It tells us that we can speak well, believe strongly, serve passionately, and still miss the very thing God cares about most. The Apostle Paul was not writing this chapter to people who lacked faith. He was writing to believers who had knowledge, gifts, passion, and activity. From the outside, the church in Corinth looked spiritually alive, but underneath, something was broken. They were competing instead of serving. They were impressing instead of loving. And Paul stops everything to say, if love is missing, nothing else matters. This chapter is often read at weddings, but it was never meant to be soft or sentimental. It was meant to confront us. It asks whether our faith sounds loud but lives empty. It challenges how we treat people who frustrate us, disagree with us, disappoint us, or hurt us. It forces us to face a truth we would rather avoid, that love is not proven by what we say we believe, but by how we live when belief becomes costly. As we walk through what the Bible teaches about love, you may feel encouraged, but you may also feel exposed. That is not a bad thing. Scripture does not reveal truth to shame us, but to transform us. This kind of love is not natural. It does not come from willpower or personality. It comes from God Himself, and when we understand it, really understand it, it changes how we see faith, relationships, suffering, and even ourselves. So as you listen, do not ask, do I agree with this? Ask something deeper. Is this the love shaping my life? Love is not what the world thinks it is. When most people hear the word love, they immediately think of a feeling, something warm, something exciting, something that comes and goes depending on how someone treats them. The world has trained us to believe that love is something you fall into and fall out of, something you give when it feels good and withdraw when it becomes uncomfortable. But the Bible steps in and quietly dismantles that idea. Biblical love is not rooted in emotion first, it is rooted in choice, commitment, and character. That is why Scripture can command love. You cannot command a feeling, but you can command a way of living. The love Paul describes in 1 Corinthians 13 is not reactive. It does not wait to see how others behave before deciding how it will respond. It moves first. It stays when it would be easier to leave. It acts when feelings are silent. This is why so much confusion exists today. We call something love when it excites us, affirms us, or benefits us. But the moment it demands patience, sacrifice, or forgiveness, we question whether it is love at all. The Bible flips that thinking upside down. Love is proven not when it is easy, but when it costs you something. Love is revealed not in attraction, but in endurance. This kind of love does not ignore truth, and it does not bend to personal comfort. It is not passive, and it is not weak. It is strong enough to stay kind when wronged, humble when praised, and faithful when misunderstood. And until we let go of the world's definition of love, we will never fully understand why Paul says it matters more than anything else. Without love, even great faith is empty. Paul does something startling in this chapter. He takes the most impressive spiritual qualities a believer could imagine and declares them worthless without love. Powerful speech, deep knowledge, unshakable faith, radical generosity, even sacrifice. None of it counts if love is absent. That should make all of us pause. We often assume that spiritual maturity is measured by how much we know, how strongly we believe, or how visibly we serve. But Paul says it is possible to be active in faith and empty in love at the same time. It is possible to defend truth and still miss the heart of God. It is possible to give your life to religious activity and never truly reflect Christ. Why is love so central? Because love reveals motive. Anyone can do the right thing for the wrong reason. Pride can preach, ego can serve, fear can obey, but love cannot be faked for long. It exposes whether our faith is about God or about ourselves. Faith moves mountains, but love shows us why we are moving them. Knowledge explains truth, but love lives it out. Sacrifice impresses people, but love pleases God. This is why Paul draws such a hard line. Without love, faith becomes noise. With love, even the smallest act becomes sacred. And that leads us to an honest question we all have to face. Are we trying to look faithful, or are we learning to love like Christ? Love is patient and kind, the foundation of Christ-like character. When Paul begins to describe what love looks like, he does not start with big dramatic actions. He starts with patience and kindness. That alone tells us something important. Real love shows itself in ordinary moments, especially when life slows us down or people test us. Patience is not simply waiting. It is how we behave while we are waiting. It is the decision to remain gentle when we feel rushed, interrupted, or misunderstood. Kindness flows directly out of patience. It is love in motion. Kindness chooses to respond with care when irritation would feel justified. Jesus demonstrated this again and again. He was patient with slow learners, kind to outcasts, gentle with the broken, and calm in the face of constant pressure. He did not rush people into transformation. He walked with them. This kind of love is not passive. It requires strength. It means restraining harsh words, slowing our reactions, and remembering that people are more important than our schedules, preferences, or pride. When patience and kindness are missing, love collapses quickly, but when they are present, relationships begin to heal and faith becomes visible. Love rejects pride, jealousy, and selfish ambition. Paul then turns to what love refuses to become. Love does not envy. Love does not boast. Love is not proud. These qualities reveal how deeply love is connected to humility. Envy looks at someone else's blessing and resents it. Boasting looks at our own and demands attention. Pride places the self at the center. Love does none of these. This was a major issue in Corinth, and it remains one today. Comparison quietly destroys love. We measure ourselves against others. We compete instead of celebrate. We seek recognition instead of service. And the moment pride takes root, love begins to shrink. Biblical love is secure because it trusts God's grace. It does not need to prove itself or outperform others. It is content to serve quietly and rejoice sincerely when others succeed. Love understands that everything we have is a gift, not an achievement. When pride is confronted, love can grow. When humility is embraced, relationships become safe. And when selfish ambition is replaced with service, faith becomes something the world can actually see and recognize as real. Love controls anger and lets go of offense. Paul goes even deeper into the heart when he says that love is not easily angered and keeps no record of wrongs. This touches places we often try to protect. Anger feels justified when we are hurt. Holding on to offense can feel like control. But the Bible tells us that love chooses a different path, not because wrong does not matter, but because bitterness costs more than forgiveness. Being not easily angered does not mean ignoring pain or pretending everything is fine. It means refusing to let emotions rule the soul. Love pauses, love listens, love responds instead of reacts. When anger takes control, love disappears quickly. But when love leads, anger loses its power. Keeping a record of wrongs is one of the quietest ways love dies. We may not say it out loud, but we remember, we replay, we store offenses for later. Love refuses to live that way. It releases the debt, not because the hurt was small, but because God's grace was greater. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is trust. It says God is the judge, not me. It says healing matters more than being right. This kind of love frees the heart from carrying burdens it was never meant to hold. Love rejoices in truth and resists deception. Paul then makes something very clear. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. In a world that often separates love from truth, the Bible refuses to do so. Real love never celebrates sin, deception, or harm. It does not look away when something is wrong. It does not call darkness light to avoid discomfort. But love also does not weaponize truth. Truth without love becomes harsh and destructive. Love without truth becomes empty and misleading. Biblical love holds both together. It speaks truth with humility. It corrects without cruelty. It seeks restoration, not humiliation. Jesus embodied this perfectly. He never compromised truth, but he never crushed people with it either. He exposed sin while offering grace. He confronted lies while extending mercy. That balance is what love looks like in action. When love rejoices in truth, it protects people from deception and points them toward freedom. It does not settle for what feels good in the moment. It longs for what leads to life. Love always protects, trusts, hopes, and perseveres. As Paul brings his description of love toward its climax, he shows us how strong and enduring this love really is. Love always protects. That means it seeks to cover, not expose. It guards the dignity of others instead of using their weaknesses as weapons. Love creates safety. It becomes a refuge rather than a threat. Love also trusts. This does not mean being naive or ignoring reality. It means choosing not to assume the worst. Love looks for God's work in people, even when progress is slow. It gives room for growth instead of demanding instant perfection. Trust allows relationships to breathe. Love hopes. It refuses to give up, even when circumstances are discouraging. Hope rooted in love believes that God is still working when evidence feels thin. It does not cling to optimism, but to God's faithfulness. Love continues to expect redemption, not because people are flawless, but because God is faithful. And love perseveres. It stays when walking away would be easier. It remains steady when emotions fluctuate. This is not stubborn endurance. It is faith-filled commitment. Love endures because it is anchored in God, not in outcomes. When everything else gives way, love stands. Why love is greater than faith and hope. Paul then makes a statement that challenges how we rank spiritual virtues. Faith, hope, and love remain, but the greatest of these is love. At first, this can feel surprising. Faith saves us, hope sustains us, but love surpasses them both because love is eternal. One day, faith will no longer be needed. What we believe now will be fully seen. Hope will be fulfilled. What we long for will be complete. But love will never end. It is the language of heaven. It is the very nature of God. Love is not just something God does. It is who He is. When we love, we reflect His character more clearly than through any gift, ability, or accomplishment. This is why love matters most. It is the one thing that will outlast everything else. And that truth reframes everything. Our faith is not meant to be impressive. It is meant to be loving. Our hope is not meant to be distant. It is meant to be active through love. When love leads, faith becomes visible and hope becomes credible. How living this love transforms everything. When Paul finishes describing love, he is not offering poetry to admire. He is calling us to a life that looks radically different from the world around us. This kind of love reshapes how we speak, how we respond, how we forgive, and how we serve. It moves faith out of theory and into daily life. Living this love changes how we treat people when no one is watching. It shows up in our homes, our workplaces, our churches, and even in moments of disagreement. It teaches us to listen longer, judge less quickly, and choose grace when pride would feel easier. Love becomes the filter through which every decision passes. This is also how the world recognizes genuine faith. Jesus said people would know His followers by their love, not by how much they know, how loud they speak, or how flawless they appear, but by how deeply and consistently they love. When love leads, the gospel becomes visible. This kind of love does not come from trying harder, it comes from staying close to Christ. As His love shapes us, our lives begin to reflect Him naturally. And when that happens, faith stops being something we talk about and becomes something the world can see.